And next up, we have the second game of the weekend, Saturday evening game, the game that has it filled my heart with joy. This game,
it was fantastic. It was the game of the weekend for sure.
I was in love with this game. I was watching it, and I wanted Scotland to win. It's been forever since they've had a good run, and so I was kind of rooting for them. But then, I just could not help but enjoy the gumption and the balls on Wales and the clinicality on them to come back into it and to manage to steal that game, and the dynamics that were in this game. It was just fantastic. It was a magnificent game. Few matches managed to mix in that mixture of quality and intensity and drama and then offensive brilliance as well, and pure entertainment value. I just thought it was everything that Six Nations rugby should want to be. That, as I said at the top of the show, that the lack of a crowd didn't show for once. Obviously Scots might disagree, it might have given them the home advantage, but you could just feel the intensity and the energy of the players. You felt the stakes.
Exactly. And
absolutely.
Both teams delivered on that, and it was styles make matchups, and it was kind of a like striker versus counter striker kind of thing. It was very much like Scotland had a lot of ball, had a lot of chances to put the game away, but Wales just would take their chances so quickly, as they did in week 1 against Ireland. They're finding ways to score tries quickly, and that's been the key for them. And then the side with 4 tries beat the side with 3 tries, which is kind of a nice balance to it. But it was so close in the final moment for Scotland as well.
It was. It could have been in so many other ways. It could have been Scotland's day. I mean, I think everybody notices that they edged the opening half to the tune of probably greater than a 17-3 lead, even when they had that, and then 17-8 on half time.
Which was sloppy championship minutes either side of half time. It's your game management.
Sloppy from one side and great from another. Scotland raced to the 17-3 lead, did miss a couple of gilt-edged chances to extend it, and Wales went and scored a try before the half to keep them in at a crucial score. And then they managed to get the first score of the second half after Scotland just missed a chance up the other end. Got up the other end, scored a beauty set-piece score, and then made it a one-score game. And then obviously the red card happens. Xander Fagerson sent off, gone. Talk about that as well. When we're talking about Scotland, it was a bad clean out. It was a bad mistake to make it a bad time. There's no question.
I have sympathy for him, because even as you were pointing out in that sequence of play, it was just a long sequence of play that had gone one side, then the other, then the ball was in play for a long time. And if you're a tight head prop, that's tough. Those are very, very tough kind of knackering plays that do make you a bit raggedy. And like the point about it, it's a red card because he made contact with the head, direct contact to the head, and his arm was tucked. It's like shoulder to the head. It's red card. That's simple. But the other thing about it is that even if he hadn't made contact with the head, it was going to be a penalty anyway, because he just flops into the ruck off his feet, and it's like it's just a sloppy play.
He musters up all the energy he has left just to get to the ruck,
and basically then falls over.
And connects with the head, unfortunately, and he has all the time to not do what he does, and unfortunately it happens, and it's a crucial moment because Wales go and score off the ensuing play, take the lead after Scotland led, and then Scotland fight back brilliantly and manage to impose themselves at scrum time after bringing off Darcy Graham to bring on an extra lock, to bring on Nell, and then they also had 3 locks, and they had this monstrous scrum, and they kept taking scrums under the Welsh posts, forcing them back, trying to get the yellow card out them to level the playing
really
field.
Really wily stuff from Wayne Pivac to bring on Leon Brown after the first scrum penalty and change up the thing and change up the back row as well. I think he made a change and just kind of change the dynamic of it, or defuse the kind of the scrum that
was there for Scotland.
It was just really savvy coaching to do that, and it worked.
And Leon Brown comes on, locks down the scrum, but then Scotland, by way of counterpunch, managed to score off first phase. Anyway. Stuart Hogg beats the 2 Welsh centres, Tompkins and Watkin, beats them both.
Makes a bit of proper mug of
makes a mug of them both, and with a bit of stutter step and a bit of Hogg magic, he played brilliantly all day long. They score and retake the lead, but then Wales again punching right off a counter attack on the other end, whip it across to the right hand side. Beautiful structured play, lovely Kiwi rugby, and Rees-Zammit, with this class little player, manages to get the winning score, and Scotland huff and puff for the 10 minutes. Can't break through. Finn Russell struggling, then they do break through, and then it's just on the last play, the ball from Doohan's break doesn't go to Stuart Hogg. It's a lovely play from Liam Williams, and he arguably tackles him off the ball after batting the ball down.
I know there's one side that'll definitely make that argument. He kind of does, but it's one of those ones that if
happens at such speed,
it's so quick, and if the ref doesn't see it in real time, they're not going to go back for it. So it's just savvy play, and it's one of those ones that well, if the pass went to hand, it wouldn't have happened anyway, you know.
No, yeah, it's a great intervention from Liam Williams, no matter what way you look at it. And it's just a heartbreak for Scotland, but awesome from Wales. And we are just going to look at it just through the perspective of both teams as well, just a little analytical look from each team's point of view. But I thought the main narrative from this game was just how brilliant it was.
What a game!
Awesome both teams were in their own way. But yeah, Scotland we'll touch on them, and they will be feeling tough about it. It was a rough one to take after dominating a lot of the exchanges,
and after beating England in Twickenham in week 1. You know, it's tough thing to swallow.
Bitter
pill to swallow. So it is. But from the Welsh point of view, though, that's a fantastic win away in Murrayfield, and given where they were, where everyone was expecting them to be off the back of a truly terrible season last year, they've hit the ground running properly. They've obviously been the beneficiaries of 2 red cards for similar infringements. The onus is on their opponents to not give away red cards. They can't do anything about it. And the main narrative I'm seeing from it, as well as like the things like Wiley plays like the Leon Brown introduction from Pivac, there's just a great attacking mentality to this team. And as of right now in this tournament, they're the most clinical team, more so than France. Even France, despite some chances, they miss some chances. They're leaving scores out there. Wales are struggling. The macro critique of them is that they're losing lots of little battles around the park. They're not quite dominating. Their set pieces stuttering. They're not controlling the ball that well. But every time they're getting in the 22 with a sniff of a try, they're scoring one, and that's good rugby. Like, I don't care what you say. There was a small narrative. I haven't heard it from most, but people in this whole weekend suggesting that Ireland played the better rugby and lost, and that Scotland played the better rugby and lost. And I'm like, I don't know about that. Like, the 2 teams in question who beat them, France and Wales, just took their tries where their opponents didn't quite, and that's the difference.
At the end of the day, it's about putting points on the board.
Possession is not as important a stat as the scoreboard.
I mean, Wales, you're talking about, they spent 5% of the match in Scotland's 22 and ended up with
scored 4 tries. That's
38% possession, similar stats last week, and again a similar outcome. And I know they had the red card and people attribute it to that, but they are for sure a super clinical side. And there are dynamics within that. Like, they didn't start the game well at all. They didn't start the game attacking well. In fact, one of the key narratives of the first half was Biggar and Davis looking so flat, and they had a line out. Actually, it wasn't in the 22, but it was in the Scottish half, where they went straight to Biggar and just bombed it into the sky.
Right. Yeah.
And Scotland recovered it. Scotland dominated the kicking game.
Yes.
Dominated it. That's why the territory was so bad. They just made the game happen in Wales's half for much of that first half. And their Wales kicking off an offensive set piece was very poor. It was compounded then by Scotland having a similar set piece, a scrum out the left, and scoring a try for Hogg out that, where Halfpenny kind of comes flat into the line because they've managed to get to the outside so well. And then Rees-Zammit's way too slow to cover him behind, and then the ball ends up being put between the 2 of them, and Halfpenny probably went a little early because Rees-Zammit wasn't there, and the 2 of them converge on the ball at the same time. Halfpenny bats it in behind Rees-Zammit. It's a bit of a calamity.
Chaos ball. It's great to see Hogg benefiting from things like that. He made it happen, and it's like, as opposed
he
to
knows from experience how painful balls they can need to deal with.
They're an absolute fullback's nightmare when you're backtracking towards your own goal line and trying to dive on a dynamic ball while guys are around you. It's very easily messed up, and we saw in that one.
Especially
it's good pressure
in winter conditions as well. It was an odd kind of game in that way. The kicks were dying in the air, and their place kicking was rough.
That's true. Actually, Callum Sheedy missed a couple off the bench as well. Some ugly strikes. It was they were heavy sounding.
We do have to talk about Callum Sheedy, because one of the things, like we talked about Wayne Pivac's nous on 60 minutes when Scotland had scrums under their sticks to get Thomas Francis out of there, and managed to lock down a scrum to prevent the yellow card catastrophe that could have come. That was good tactical nous, but changing your super experienced halfbacks at the exact same time on 48 minutes was unreal, because they started the second half, like they scored a great try. There was a crucial sequence, but I'm jumping ahead here to that change, but there was a crucial sequence at the end of the first half after they'd just been pulverised at set piece, well, certainly scrum, not line out, but they'd been pulverised at scrum. They'd been lost the kicking game entirely. They were losing the power game. Scotland were getting in behind their defence. They had 2 tries to the good, and they were in their 22 hunting another try. and Wyn Jones makes an unreal poach, a great poach. Now the ref does give it for sealing, but it's cause Wyn Jones is in there. The playmaking loose head that he is comes up with an awesome play. They get up the pitch, they run a really, really nice smooth maul.
Their offensive maul was fantastic.
Yeah, it was dynamic.
It was
quick. Yeah, exactly. It was just the idea of this quick change and then pivoting to one side and pivoting to the other and doing it as a unit. It was really smart.
It was catching Scotland consistently in both halves as well. That one obviously, and then they had another one in the second.
A blitzing maul that generates a penalty and allows them to get down and set up an attack in the Scottish 22. Their first real purchase in the 22. They have another maul that is brought down, but it gets close to the line, and then they whip it wide in a couple of phases. Beautiful play from Nick Tompkins.
To get the hands free and get it out.
But Biggar kind of just sits back. And you could argue Biggar should find the outside man, but instead he gives it to Tompkins, and it's a simple little pass. But Tompkins manages just to spin out of the tackle and force the other defender to come
two guys in,
and whip the ball over to Liam Williams, who just gives a smart pass out for Louis Rees-Zammit to get the try. It's a lovely, lovely, crisp set piece one made by Tompkins, made by Offensive Rugby, and that got them back in the game.
Yes,
that was huge.
It was vital, and it was also a dent in Scotland's confidence, and it probably contributed to some of the stuttering stuff we saw in the third quarter then, because obviously there's a huge difference between 17-3 and 17-8, but also if you go back even further, as you say, it kind of came from a Scotland attack as well, so they feel very aggrieved because they should have been 3 scores ahead, and now
it's great playmaking from Wyn Jones, great playmaking from the Maul, great playmaking from Tompkins, but not too much from Biggar and Davis, and they had some bad moments. And then they start the second half, they get a freebie from Scotland. At the beginning of the half, they get a free easy penalty and a chance to go into the corner, and Biggar tries a banana kick and misses touch, and Scotland end up going up the pitch. They get a big steal from Hamish Watson, and then they set up an attack of their own, and they knock on the door, and just
get pinned for crossing.
As Cummings crosses the line, the pass that should have gone to him goes behind him to Graham, and the two of them get it mixed up, and then it's a blown try.
It's actually as bad as the place. It's like the double movement play where it's like it's not held up, where you get at least get the scrum. It's a penalty, and then it's
completely blown play. It's like the rugby equivalent of the fumble into the end zone that ends up being a touchback. It's a complete disaster from Scotland's point of view, and Wales get off the hook again. And then on that moment, Pivac changes Biggar and Davis out of the game.
Fantastic to see.
I just think
there's not many coaches in the world who do that.
Say what you want about Wayne Pivac, he's ballsy and he knows what he wants.
And
bringing on Little Hardy for I don't know how many caps he has, but not many.
He's great.
And
he played really, really well.
Just crisp and quick and doing what he says on the tin, as Thomas Williams did before he got injured. And bringing on Callum Sheedy, and then the next thing, they're finding tries, and they find the Maul gives them great purchase. But
Sheedy finds a lovely ball to Rees-Zammit to Halaholo to Rees-Zammit, I think, or was it Halaholo to Sheedy to Rees-Zammit? I think that was it. And it was a lovely little kind of interplay of hands, lovely connect, and then Rees-Zammit, despite being a try hungry, try scoring winger, does the absolute right thing and draws the man and feeds Liam Williams, who goes in untouched.
It's Halaholo to Sheedy, and it's they set up a lovely screen in the centre. They actually work it really well. Get the out half on the outside, and he picks the right ball. He kind of makes a fool of Graham, then Louis Rees-Zammit, and just get one of those glorious set piece tries where the passing is so crisp and the play design is so good that nobody lays a glove on anybody, and in you trot on the outside.
Untouched.
It was
lovely,
a beautiful try in that way. Like, it's nuts. The Scots were at 6s and 7s, and nobody laid a glove on anybody, and that's just an awesome score whenever that happens.
It is,
Then obviously the red card came, but Wales did have the momentum at that stage. It is a game changer. It came immediately after that score. They made it a 2-point game. They had a long open piece of play, and they get the red card. It's tough for Scotland. Wales just happy that it happened about 2 weeks in a row. It is a factor, no arguments about it. But it's what happens next. Last week they struggled after going a man up because Ireland responded really well, and they struggled to get purchase. But they had a penalty. They got into Scotland's 22, and crucially they scored another try. They got a great maul going again. They got it up to the goal line, and Wyn Jones manages to pick and get the score because he just can't stop making
awesome plays. He's been one of the players of the tournament as Wyn Jones, and well deserving, and it was a crucial score, and it put the pressure on Scotland, who then obviously went up the other end and made them defend for a while. And then just what do you want from your young exciting winger but to steal a game back from Scotland when you're away from home and it's the last quarter? A fantastic play. And I love the instinct is to get wide and attack with Wales, but when you have quality like that on the wing, just give them the ball early as they did. It gives them the option to get the chip in as well. He did. He managed to take the outside.
You could see some great coaching in that as well. Just the way that they set it up, it was very Kiwi. They just moved the ball a little wide. They set up a midfield screen outside of Sheedy. With Beard as the distributor.
Yeah.
He had Beard and a forward next to him. Very Kiwi, getting the big skillful lock out in the wide channels, and it just sits down Harris for a moment too long, and once the ball gets outside Harris, it's game over. And Louis Rees-Zammit is away on the right wing, and there's really nothing that anybody on Scotland's team could do once he gets the ball. He just executes it perfectly.
He does.
Glides away, puts the chip in at the perfect time. It's on the money. It sits up perfectly.
Bang.
Try and a brilliantly taken try, a class game-winning try. From there they had 10 minutes of gruesome defending to do that they did really well. There were a couple of great steals in there. Both of them managed to strip Keble at one point,
which was vital.
Scotland back, and they just never let them get into
a lovely
position.
Kick from Rees-Zammit. One of Rees-Zammit's super plays came subsequent to that try as well. He'd already had 2 tries, but a somewhat loose kick came to him, and he put it in a lovely banana kick into the open space, and then found touch, pinning them back. I think that was on around 71 or 2 minutes, and it's really lovely to see a young man look so mature and executing a tough skill and the right play in the right moment, just calmly and coolly, as if he was playing on the park, in club footy or something.
He's wearing confidence and enjoying his rugby, and guys like that make all the kinds of good plays. Like a striker in football, the weight lifts off their shoulders once they score a goal, and it's like that for these young wingers. They want to score tries, and they get the try. They're happy, and all of a sudden they're happy to make plays for the team. And he gets a couple of tries. He's I think top try scorer. He must be with 3 tries.
He's 3 tries.
And all of a sudden he's happy to try everything. He's happy to make good plays for the team, but he just wants to get involved. That energy and that confidence that a young winger gets from getting on the board is huge.
Yeah, indeed.
And you look at controversial. You look at the other end with James Lowe, very, static and disappointed, and he has the capacity to make plays, but he's just looking like he has the weight in the world on him because he's not getting the space to score the tries, and that's what wingers want to do.
Indeed.
I just love the way Wayne Pivac is approaching the.
He might be Wayne Jones in a few seasons if it keeps going well, or Williams. Wayne Williams.
But I love his optimistic approach to the game. It started to look more Kiwi, and maybe
it's also quite as Kiwi as it is. It's quite Welsh too. Their tradition is quick service from scrum half. Lovely expansive footy and using the full width of the pitch to attack you with. Wales have a tradition of doing that, as much as we saw them become a robust defensive unit under Gatland and have some good strike plays. The initial time of Gatland's, in terms of Gatland's tenure, the Welsh faithful were kind of bemoaning the fact that he was making them a bit more bludgeoning and a bit less flowy and offensive as they were used to being. And Pivac seems to embrace that, as well as it being Kiwi style. It suits Wales down to the ground. I've often made the point that even though their club sides don't necessarily play the top quality rugby, they all have a sniff when there's a sniff of the try line, even down at the level of Dragons, who are quite a poor team. But when there's a counter attack on or something, they switch on. They have a good instinct for attacking footy, and it's great to see that in the national side, and them scoring tries away in Murrayfield and such beautiful ones to win the game.
There were signs of great defensive improvement in that last 10 minutes as well, where they held their discipline really well.
That's right.
And didn't give Scotland entrance into their half, apart from 1 or 2 breaks, but managed to shut them down with a great play from Liam Williams. And maybe these couple of wins, these couple of breaks
momentum
might be what they need just to spring into life. Exactly.
Certainly tees up their game with France very nicely, doesn't it? It's
game with France from the last weekend could be huge. The game against England is going to be first priority.
Huge.
That's obviously we'll get into that in depth next week. And listen, from Wales' point of view, we're optimistic about Wales. There is a reason why everyone is kind of giving out about them. Scotland did have every chance. They were blown away in that opening period. They were kicking balls very poorly. They were losing micro exchanges. The whole game was taking place in their half. Their set piece, their line-out actually had some good hustle, but their
line-out's much improved, and their offensive maul much improved. There are positives in that, just to see their pack being put in some
mismanaging their way around the park.
That's true.
Dan Bigger nowhere near involved enough, and we'll talk next week about what they should do there. But dropping Dan Bigger for the England game doesn't tend to be a good play. So you have to get him involved somehow. You have to sort of you have to generate a bit more game management and get more opportunities to be clinical.
Yeah.
But the clinicality is a huge positive, and
that's their main positive. Yeah. They're taking, as you say, 5% of the game took place in the Scottish half, or Scottish 22, and yet 4 tries were scored by Wales. That's fantastic. Like, that's the main stat you should be looking at from a positive spin if you're Welsh, because you're scoring tries, and that's going to win you games more often than not, despite not being quite the full package yet. But they're getting there, and momentum is key.
Yeah, and score tries, you keep winning games, but they are going to have to get better at scrum and better in all these little areas.
Yeah, but they were improved on like things like their line out and their offensive maul, that improved, and then with momentum and confidence it's
absolutely. They've always been a confidence team.
Yeah,
big game against England, and they'll look forward to that. If they win that, Triple Crown in the bank and on for a Grand Slam.
Yeah, indeed. What a mighty year it could be for Kimru Ambith and all that. And
is that how you pronounce that? Probably not. Is that how
Kimru Ambith? I think. Oh, correct. Feel free to
that's
correct
how it's spelled, but I don't know. It tends not to be
probably not. Well, my Welsh pronunciation is not something that we're going to get into on this podcast, because I don't know, the editing will be bad. No, but we will pivot on to Scotland then, because conversely, as great a game as this was for us, the neutrals, and for Wales in terms of the Welsh fans watching, no doubt delighted. If you're Scottish, despite begrudgingly admitting that it was a great game for the neutral, it's very disappointing to come out the wrong side of it, obviously, because being at home, coming off that momentous win against England, feeling like you probably played a lot of the rugby, or the lion's share of the rugby, in terms of just how you held the ball, how you dominated the territory game, the way the pack was performing, the way the scrum was performing, the way Stuart Hogg was performing. It's very disappointing to come out the wrong side of that result, and it's there, but for a whisker. Obviously that pass could have stuck, but there are a few other moments. The crossing call that shouldn't. Well, it was the right call.
Oh yeah, there's a huge amount to reflect on. I think you have to start with Scotland on the positive.
You do,
which was like they were enormously successful in a number of areas, and they showed great heart, and they showed real quality.
Yeah.
In that opening stanza of the game, they were demonstrating an ability to control where the game was being played. They were kicking the ball really well. They didn't have it all their own way at the line out, but generally it was going well, and they were having they were mixing it up on offense. They were counter-attacking off poor Welsh exits pretty well. Like Gareth Davis's kicking wasn't great. Obviously there was the dead air factor, but they were getting Darcy Graham and Hogg were combining on the counter-attack and giving them purchase in the Welsh half, moving the ball really well. And then you look at the first try they scored was excellent piece of play from Finn Russell, and then great instincts from Johnny Gray.
Just to be there, hit the line beautifully, carried really strongly, kept his feet, and went in for a second contact, which
it was
gave
everything
all the
that we
momentum.
want this team to be. It was they were wonderfully physically industrious, playing a disciplined traditional brand, controlling where the game was being played, and then Finn Magic came in. He cuts through the 2 back row forwards, Faletau and Wainwright, flicks a ball to Johnny Gray, runs through, and then they execute. Ali Price, audacious little kick with the wrong foot. He's a lefty, and he just pits it with the outside of the right foot right onto Darcy Graham's stride, and it just completely catches Wales off guard. Straight after a line break, Halfpenny's just a little out of position because he's expecting the ball to go left. Ali Price picks it up, dinks it in behind for Darcy Graham. It's just really, really well executed. The perfect gelling of what the Scotland team can be. And then likewise, the next try for Hogg, just executed perfectly off a first phase off a left field scrum, sitting down the midfield, feeding Russell, who's looping around so he can put Hogg in space with a nice pass, and then Hogg does the rest once he's in the space. He drifts the Welsh defenders. We talked about it from a Welsh point of view, how awkward it was, and Halfpenny comes up into the line. Just as he does that, Hogg puts the perfect kick in behind. He knows how tough those things are to deal with from a fullback's point of view. Rees-Zammit's not there in time, and all of a sudden it's a try. It's not that you would have seen it live because the cameraman cut away.
Yes, that was a curiosity. I don't know if that was with everyone's coverage, but it was cut away just at that crucial moment when Halfpenny kind of didn't gather the ball, and then suddenly it cuts back to Hogg scoring, and it's like, oh, okay.
we got it on the replay.
We got it.
It was an awesome piece of play, and they were controlling the whole home game. The whole game they had some awesome, like they dropped the ball off the restart after scoring that try to make it 17-3 and gave Wales a chance. Then big scrum penalty from Sutherland and Fagerson.
Sutherland and Fagerson looking great. Sutherland was looking great in the scrum himself. He was causing all kinds of problems, and then Nell, even when he came in or was forced in, was great at the scrum. Their scrum is one of the great positives for them. Like, they were doing damage in Twickenham. They were all over the Welsh scrum, to be honest. Wales were just trying to scrum for parity and getting it out of there. So the pack is mighty. They'll have some concerns with their defensive maul because they're normally good at defending the maul.
They were caught by speed.
The speed of transition with Wales was really, really fantastic and did catch them out. So there's a little work on there for sure.
That stuff is going to happen, but I just thought that the key here for Scotland was the couple of offensive sets either side of half-time, because they were playing close to a perfect game.
It's a similar story we've seen for Scotland before, just the tries that have gone a-begging.
Even last week when they were dominating the game, they let England have a chance and a sniff, and the difference here is that Wales took that sniff, England didn't. But they dominated the game for not enough scoreboard pressure. Even though they scored 2 very smart tries, they had another offensive set before Wales got their try, which ended in a steal. It was just a little slow. They had a couple for me, it's on Russell to bring that. And he had a couple of moments throughout the game. He actually had a couple of picks, one of which he chalked off with an instant steal towards the end. But another pick where he was just trying to give the delayed ball, and it was a decent read from Tompkins. He's kind of got to make that stuff happen a little more. He also wasted a couple of penalty advantages with cross kicks that didn't come off or grubbers that didn't come off. And Scotland really do need him, and he did create some lovely plays. He created the first try. He kicked well all day. He's still top class, probably the best performing out half in the home nations in Britain and Ireland. But he's for the elite guy who's in there, Hogg's outperforming him at the moment, and he needs to make those killer plays that put tries on the board. Because they were a bit stuttery, and then obviously there was that one after Wales got the try on the other side of half time to take a 24-8 lead, which might be too much for Wales to
come back and from. It's certainly a try does damage terrible to a team's confidence, and conversely butchering a surefire try has the opposite effect,
because there were great defensive plays. The one before the first half was a great defensive play from Wales, but that one when Scott Cummings goes ahead of Graham,
it's just a butchered try.
It was
the try. It was that phase. It was right there. They'd worked it really well. They'd controlled the ball nicely. They'd managed to get some tempo on it finally in the 22, and he was there to crash over, and the ball just went to the wrong man. Those little moments. It's the difference between we were complimenting Wales for being so clinical with the chances they were getting, despite being dominated in large parts in other areas. That's the positive you'll take from Scotland, is that you did dominate large areas against a team that for the last decade plus have probably had the better of you in terms of the head to head. So it's nice to see you being able to outdo them at the scrum, be physical, be forcing
control
them onto
the
back
game's
foot,
played with the kicking
all of
game.
that stuff. The kicking game's been fantastic, but clinical. You need to be able to take more tries, your tries.
That one with Cummings and Graham was the one, and that was what it starts with just this really clever line-out play where they Turner, who's been just sensational the last few weeks, throws the ball over the top of the line out straight to Lang, who flicks it inside to Graham, and they cut the line and get to a metre out, and then from there it tightens up a bit. There's wiliness from Tipperick.
It slows up before it speeds up again. Scotland had to
Wales create away a penalty and then force them to take it, and then they do take it, and they're slowly working their way around the corner, and it's just a little. It's a little less than slick. It's a little different from, we'll talk about France in a wee while, but for what France do when they're in the red zone is much better.
Yes,
and that's definitely a work on for Scotland when you have a guy like Finn Russell. They are flying up into Finn's face, and it's on Gregor to figure out a way to sort of check defences when they're doing that. He needs maybe a runner on his inside and a runner on his outside coming from deep. They need to check defences coming flying out into Finn's face, covering the grubber and the passes. But they do need to move the ball a little better when they're deep in the red zone, because a few too many chances went to begging.
Indeed.
And that was the killer, because then Fagerson comes in with that
potentially
a game losing contribution, and from there they really do struggle to they concede 2 red zone tries pretty instantly. They struggle on the maul defence, and they do great to hustle back,
to take Darcy Graham, a danger man, off to accommodate Nell. All of that stuff happens in that little spell, and Wales being clinical enough as they are, they managed to take the game away from them. But that's to take nothing away from obviously the game itself. It was just fantastic.
I thought they showed tremendous heart as well. I don't think there's any question about the character of the team in that sense. They did lose the game, and they lost they had lacked nous in key moments either side of half time to put the game to bed. That for sure is true. But the spirit that they showed when they were down a man, to go up the fields, to start scrumming Wales off the park, and then take the try when Wales forced them to use the ball, and then even in that last sequence I saw Finn Russell
look for the floated over the top, and it wasn't there.
He was working so hard to try and break down that Welsh defence, and it wasn't happening for him. And then just towards the end, it was almost like Mahomes reminiscent from the Super Bowl, where he's just getting destroyed by a defence, but then he just keeps working, and Finn makes a great play. At the very, very end, he's spinning around, he's got 3 defenders around him, and he just flicks a ball, out to Doohan, who's unmarked, and Doohan's away. And in another world, that's one of the all-time great Six Nations tries, if he manages to connect with Hogg, but Liam Williams' intervention proves too much, and that's the way it goes.
It's a slightly slack pass. It wasn't a great showing from Doohan. That's a bit of a negative thing, is that he was kind of frozen out of the game for large periods, and then obviously that was his moment, and the pass didn't stick. And then conversely, Rees-Zammit, who he was marking, scored 2 tries and assisted another. So it's like, those aren't the fun days for wingers. Wingers want to score tries, and he's been in great form, but they didn't quite manage to play him in. And I think that goes to what you were saying about Finn. He's obviously getting crowded out, but he needs to maybe up the performance level a little bit to align with where Hogg's at.
Show your elite, and that's sort of where Hogg has come from. It's just like, show it. And Finn, he's been out of the picture for Scotland for a year, so he is going to need to sort of bet himself
back in. He's coming back to a slightly new setup in terms of how they're playing. Since last he was kind of a regular guy.
He'll be a key man. Like Scotland, they've lost this game against Wales, having beaten England. And that's going to be a knock the stuffing out you kind of game. But listen, home advantage doesn't mean anything.
No,
they know that. So these games are just games against teams. They've got France coming up. It is in Paris. It's Finn coming back to where he plays. So there is that factor. I think Finn is going to be a huge player in that. And that's a massive game. They've got France in Paris. Then they've got Ireland in Murrayfield. Ireland have been a real problem for Scotland in recent times.
True. Yeah.
Those 2 games are going to be absolutely crucial, because if they go, if they go 0-2 or even 1-1, if they lose to France and beat Ireland, like after that performance against England, it's going to be hugely frustrating for them. They're going to this game against France is going to be massive for Scotland, and really they're going to go in there feeling like they need a win to progress, and if they don't win, they're going to feel stuck in the mud again. And then France are tough. France are the best team in the competition. They're going to be at home, so it's going to be a huge task, and they're going to need Finn Russell on his A game in Paris.
It's part of their winning conditions. That's definitely what's needed. But that was undoubtedly the game of the weekend. Fantastic game of the tournament so far. Game of the year so far.
Game of post-pandemic.
It was just everything you want from a rugby game. 7 tries overall. The team with 4 took it. A 1-point margin. Went down to the wire the very last play.
And a defensive play wins it as well. It's not like defences weren't involved.
No, indeed. So it was just the perfect marriage of drama and high quality and intensity throughout. And it was just a pleasure to watch. And hopefully more of that as the tournament goes on.
Absolutely. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you for tuning in to the Overlap Rugby podcast. If you enjoyed what you hear, please like and subscribe, and leave a comment down below as well. We enjoy hearing your opinions too. Thank you.